The room's tight and we have a full house. It will get warm, so I had the big fan blasting till the very last second. My name is Tamara Nejikowski. I am the chair of the Library Board of Trustees. The Library Board of Trustees decided to host this event to bring some experts in to answer questions and present information about the Rollinsford Water and Sewer District. There have been some issues with regard to that information being available to people. And the goal of this evening's event is to allow everyone who came this evening as a member of the public to ask this group any questions that they might have. There are a couple of ground rules. I'm going to attempt to sort of moderate this, not in the way that we would officially sort of Robert's rules in a political meeting. You are welcome to stand up and state your name and where you live if you want to, but you're not required to do that at a meeting like this. I am going to keep off limits questions that have to do with the political issues in town around water and sewer. This group is not really here and qualified to talk about what our own in-house questions might be about that. We might be able to have another meeting about that. I'm also going to keep off limits anything that has to do with the criminal activity that has been mentioned in the newspaper, because this group is not here to speak about that or qualified to talk about that. A couple of things that I was thinking about today were the fact that the water and sewer district does not only impact people that live in the water and sewer district, but the ways that it impacts our entire community. I don't know if you know this or not, but our entire municipal operation is in the water and sewer district. Police, fire, town hall, school, library. So everybody that receives services from the town, all of those entities are within the Rollinsford Water and Sewer District. I was also thinking about how the reputation that could potentially come onto the town if we have these types of issues with our water and the publicity that's beginning to come out about it, it affects the reputation of our town and everybody's property values in town. Whether you have a well or you're on water and sewer, we all draw from the same water table. There's potential impacts there. And taxes, if our property values are dropped in the district because of our water, we'll pay less taxes, but everybody else in town will pay more to compensate for what we are paying because our property will be valued lower. If everyone in town had to put a well in, if everybody that's in the district now had to put a well in, we'd probably kill the town. So those are the things that I was thinking about today, and I'm really happy tonight to have the guests that we have here to speak to you. We're going to start off with Ray McNeil, who is the Rollinsford Water and Sewer District Superintendent. Are you Chris?
Yes.
You're small, right?
What's your name on there?
Ray is going to make about a 15-minute presentation of some information just to give us a general overview of Rollinsford Water and Sewer District. He is our superintendent, and once he's done, we will open the floor to questions, and we will be directing the questions to everyone on the panel. Let me just quickly introduce who's here. Dr. Jim Malley is a UNH professor of civil and environmental engineering. John Addy is from DES. Cynthia Clevens is also from DES. Chris Berg is an engineer from Wright and Pierce. Frank Roselli is the former chair of the Water and Sewer District. And Ray McNeil, of course, is the superintendent of the Water District. So Ray, if you want to go ahead and start your presentation, that would be great.
So this presentation could go 15 minutes or 3 hours, obviously. So I'm going to try and make it short and sweet just so that we can get through the information. Let me need you to log in, sorry. There's going to be a lot of information on the slides.
Jeff, would you mind just closing the lights? Thank you.
There's going to be a lot of information on the slides. We can go back to any slides if anybody's interested in and talk more detail about it. Just give us a little idea of what the infrastructure entails. We're going to be a little water heavy just due to the fact that we've recently had an asset management study completed, so we've got a lot of accurate data that's to date. So the wastewater side is not going to be as detailed. So obviously that picture there is our district. So water district infrastructure. So we've got water treatment systems. We've got 2 bedrock wells on Foundry Street known as the Porter Well. We treat for the removal of arsenic and benzene at that location. We've also got 1 gravel packed well known as the General Sullivan Well. That's our workhorse. So we're maintaining primarily 9 months out of the year, General Sullivan's able to produce the water needed. The other, 3 to 4 months, we have to run Porter Well regularly to offset the high demand for the summertime. And then at General Sullivan, we're treating for pH adjustment, we're disinfecting, and we're also treating at both wells for corrosion control with polyorthophosphate. It's actually not in the slide. So the distribution system consists of 1.5 inch to 12-inch diameter mains. The oldest pipes in the system are cast iron installed near the mill in the school. The total inventory of material consists of cast iron, asbestos cement, ductile iron, and there is some unknown materials at this point. So we also have a water storage tank. Sits up behind the transfer station. It's 50 feet tall, and it has approximately 750,000 gallons worth of storage. And that was installed in '96. So what it's worth, and this is pulling out of the asset management study that Wright Pierce did for us. So we've got 6 miles of pipe, we've got the tank, we've got the 3 wells, we have 63 hydrants, 600 plus services. So the total replacement cost of the system is greater than $12 million. So obviously it's considered a major capital asset. Water prioritization. When we're talking about this, again, we pulled this priority list from the asset management plan and study as we were navigating through that project. So projects that are a priority right now, Porter Well, we need to integrate, we need integration and automation so that we can operate that facility 24/7. Currently, we cannot do that. It has to be operated during the work hours. It has to have an operator there. The standards that have been set there so that we can provide clean water leaving that facility because of the complex treatment process requires somebody right now to manually do the checks. So that's definitely a big project that needs some attention. General Sullivan, same idea. We don't need as much integration other than the new equipment that we're looking to install there. And we'll get into that a little further on. Operations, replace variable frequency drive at General Sullivan. That's actually, we can check that off the list. About 3 months ago, we had a flood there. Took out the old drive and through an insurance claim, we were able to upgrade that. And there's some slides to see what that project looked like completely. Booster pump preventative maintenance at Porter Well. That's attached to the benzene removal system. Currently, it's offline because we've shown no detect or very low detectable limits of benzene in our raw water for many quarters running now. So we've got the approval from the state to not be treating, but we're monitoring to make sure if it does creep back in, we have the ability to turn the system back on. But those pumps, booster pumps, are due for some general maintenance, major general maintenance and overhaul. Moving over to General Sullivan, just basic building installation. The main door needs to be replaced. Some low-hanging fruit there that needs to be addressed. And then install automated flow control sump pump at General Sullivan. So like I said, we had a flood there, and the sump pump doesn't have any alarming controls or parameters to let me know if there's an issue there. So when we did have the flood, we were lucky that an operator had gone back after his routine checks and found that it had been flooded. Otherwise, I would have gotten an alarm saying that we lost power due to a short circuit because of the flood. And then hydrant maintenance and flushing. So water projects, number one, getting into that again, this is just a quick shot of what I just discussed at both these locations with a total estimated cost to do the upgrades. There's a good majority of both of these projects that can be done in-house by not only myself but our operators. So there's a lot of value there. We can save quite a bit of money by going through this process and implementing these upgrades in-house. We can go back to this at a later time. These are some just before and after shots of what I walked into and the adjustments and upgrades we made over the last 18 months to help with controlling the chemical addition. So this is General Sullivan. That's a shot of the chemical addition system that was there, and it's moved ahead on me, but this is what we have now. So we upgraded the system to peristaltic pumps. Their flow pace now, the next phase would be to get some readbacks on them so I can be alarmed if they stop, but that would be in that next phase.
Right, can you go back to the extension cords
For sure.
and whatnot?
Yeah, so I mean, to point this out, you know, you've got extension cords, and the reason those were there is all this equipment used to be in the basement. And the attempt was to bring all the day tanks upstairs because we were transferring chemicals into the basement. So, you know, the past crew, unlike myself, they weren't electricians, so this was the fix for them. They ran an extension cord down through the hatch and they plugged into the outlet that was being used in the basement. So, obviously, the next, you know, this phase here, it's brought down through conduit, wired into the control panel correctly, and then, again, flow pace, which we didn't have that capability before. So the flow pacing gives us a much more stable water leaving General Sullivan, which has been part of the corrosion issue that we've been contending with. So this upgrade was to combat that. So another shot, this was, as it says there, this is the control lab. That's actually an upgrade from what I walked into. You see there's a pH meter there and some bottles for testing. When I got here, there was no testing being done at the facility. The testing on the water was being done during our monthly bacteria samples. That's when we get our chlorine residuals, and that's when we get potentially a pH reading. Now the standard is 7 days a week. We're getting pH, chlorine, alkalinity, and polyorthophosphate residuals at that location to maintain the most consistent treatment possible. This is just a quick shot of the chemical storage. And where we're at now. I will note to the left there, this was approved by the current commission. To the very left is some of you may have heard the conversation about the chemical transfer pumps. That was a huge investment and an upgrade for the safety of the crew, so that when we transfer the residuals, you know, in those 50-gallon drums, there's usually 10 or 15 gallons left that we can't leave due to the fact that we might run out of chemical overnight, so we have to transfer prematurely. And that system allows one operator to set the pump up, turn it on, and it's got a nozzle like you have at a gas station so you can control it, which is a lot different than the system we had in place before. And then the eyewash station was also approved, and we implemented that recently. This is the basement I was talking about that flooded. So, again, failed heating system. That's a temporary heating system that we had in place to get through this winter. The heating system's top right that failed. You can see it's tagged out. And just above the heating system there is, no, we can do it here. That's the new control panel that was replaced due to the flood. But that's a huge upgrade that we were looking to do this year. So we're fortunate to have got that accomplished already.
Did you do that in-house?
We did not do that in-house. Lavalette Control did the installation for us. They do all our control work. They were the original control company that did the original installation. They know our system really well, so it worked out well. So again, this is kind of what we're dealing with. And that's where we're at now. There's still some work to be done, but you know, we're moving in the right direction. So this is just a shot. You see the backup generator there, but what we're really focusing on here is the mini split system there. That was the replacement to the heating system that failed downstairs. So that's an electrical heating system. They're super efficient, but they also provide air conditioning. And it's not because the operators want to be out in the field and sit in a cool room. It's because we've turned that into a lab now, and that lab requires climate control so that we can process the samples properly so we can get accurate readings. And this is just a quick overview again of the upgrades.
Did you realize the chemical savings with the peristaltic pumps?
Yeah, I mean, I've got the data for this chemical savings. Not only the flow pacing is really what's obviously helping chemical savings. We have definitely cut back on certain chemicals, but we've also increased others that we found that we were not pumping enough in. And that one chemical being caustic, we were introducing caustic, but not at a high enough level, so we were never, maximizing the pH range that we wanted. So a lot of that caustic that we were pumping for, years really wasn't doing us a lot, and caustic is our most expensive chemical. So we are using more of it, but we're getting what we're supposed to be getting right now. So this is just a quick shot in terms of the evaluation of the facilities that Wright Pierce did for us, and then also just prioritizing again in terms of the upgrade. So online pH and chlorine analyzer, integration PLC for automation, and that's for chemical dose adjustments. VFD, we can check that off, we've done it. The flood and sump pump sensors, we still need to get involved in that, and the transient voltage surge suppression. That area, for some reason, we do have a lot of brownouts, and it's something that we deal with there, so definitely high on the priority. So this is going to start stepping us into Porter Well. Some before and afters. This is, this is what we're using for process control lab there now. Just like General at Porter in the past, there was no process control. What was happening is the system would be turned on, and it would operate in the manner it was set. So it was almost set and forget it. Nothing was flow paced. The dose was set at the beginning of the installation of the well house, but there wasn't a whole lot of checks and balance going on to make sure that the water leaving that facility met standards. So this is a pretty cool little shot here. So through the asset management study, we had Wright Pierce brought in a gentleman that does 3D imaging, and this is a shot that you could never see because really we're looking at 3 walls there. So it gives you a good idea of what's going on at Porter and the complexity of the system. So to the white system there is the benzene removal, and to the left of that is our arsenic removal system. And then to the very left of that is our chemical storage area right now. Another interesting shot, that's a wall, so I don't even know how he was able to provide this shot, but this is gives you an idea from the back side, which normally you have to crawl through there. Pretty cool. And then just another vantage point there. So again, the evaluation of Porter Well, install remote communications and SCADA. It's at this point, and we can get into it with Cindy, we definitely feel that's the highest priority in terms of any resolutions to the water quality issues on Willie and the surrounding streets. The most immediate solution. Installation of online pH and chlorine analyzers, and there's one more to that, and that's the turbidity meter. Because turbidity is a huge measurement tool that we're using to be able to treat the arsenic at the level we are right now. The next thing, again, integration, HVAC improvements is a must. And then construction of a building, an addition to the building to provide a lab space and chemical separation, which is much needed up there. We've got many chemicals that they mix. Actually, Dr. Nally pointed this out on our first pour. We've got, what were the 2? Muriatic acid and sodium hypochlorite, right?
Yeah.
So those
strong
2
acid and chlorine shouldn't be together.
shouldn't be together, which they were right next to each other. And he pointed out to me really quickly to have them separated because if they mix, it's chlorine gas, which is obviously deadly. So we've since done that, but we still need to look at continuing on with that process and getting a little more professional separation. Short-term capital investment, this came out of Wright Pierce's study. I think some people have seen this. I'll go through it real quick. Number 1 item topic is Willie Street, Locust and Prospect Street. Now the whole job total is 1.2 million estimated. It could be done in sections, and that's a topic that we can go down that road, but the whole project is 1.2, and Willie being the street having the most issues, just replacing Willie, there's speculation that it might not be the ultimate fix, because we've got online cast surrounding, and Willie's got a low point, and there's a very good potential that that online cast surrounding is still gonna leach, and we're gonna gather it in the low point. So it's definitely something to discuss about when we go after this, the direction we take. The water well improvements is high priority as well, to get the automation up there so that we can operate that facility truly to offset General Sullivan when it's running at a 50-50 blend, or, you know, what, maybe it's a, you know, 30-70, however we end up doing it, it's gonna be consistent. That's the goal that was also identified through the corrosion control study that was performed by Wright Pierce. General Sullivan well, again, we've covered that. That's just the cost to it, $30,000. The storage tank inspection, which is due, I think, every 5 years, is $20,000, and we're coming up on our 5th year right now. So next year we have to budget for that. Excuse me, and then the distribution system in basically the village district, right? So downtown, all that online cast, all that, other than Main Street, that was replaced in the near future, recently, needs to be addressed, and the plan needs to be put in place. Long-term projects, you know, supply, storage, distribution. So develop an additional groundwater source, you know, estimated cost of $1 million. Again, storage tank inspection, because that's an ongoing process, and then distribution. So the goal would be to replace all known cast iron pipe in the system, not only because it's the weak link, but it's where we're going to have our, you know, water quality issues.
Right. Sorry, this is long-term, but what are you talking, like, time-wise?
Sure, so I mean, that's a good question for the community, right? What is a long-term plan look like? And, you know, we can pick Chris's brain a little bit about that, but it can be, you know, 5 to 10 years, it could be a 20-year plan. I mean, it depends on how you prioritize the projects, and if you have a true plan in place, it can be a long-term 20-year plan, as long as you're meeting each goal each year, right? If you start missing things, then that long-term plan falls apart real quick. You know, so you can definitely spread it out. And there's different ways to manipulate a long-term plan that can be, you know, fairly cost-effective. So wastewater, like I said, a little, not quite as heavy on current information, but I'm going to go into the things that I recommend based on my ability and knowledge of the facility. So project number 1, pump galley, automatic transfer switch number 2, secondary clarifier, chemical addition, oxidation ditch, and then really paying attention to a biological phosphorus removal and preparing for permit changes, because they are coming. We've been tipped off. John can speak to that tonight. I mean, we're going to have permit changes that are going to offer challenges that are going to require upgrades to current processes. Maintenance, annual line cleaning and inspection, so that's, you know, CATV, getting a robot in the collection system and taking the pictures and looking to see where we're at, and, you know, not only we're cleaning it, but we're finding out where we might potentially have issues so that we can correct them before it fails, and we're not reacting. Chlorine control, chlorine contact chamber needs repair. The concrete that sets the baffles up they're in rough shape. The system works fine. It's more of a cosmetic, but it definitely does need to be addressed. And then manhole repairs around the town. Definitely something that needs to be addressed. So we talked about the pumping galley. You know, I'm not going to go through this whole slide. We can wrap back to this so I can speed it up. But this is number 1, highest priority at the wastewater treatment facility at this time. This is a breakdown, just a scorecard on it, reasons why we need to do it, you know, obviously the benefits and the risk if we don't. So we can do it in-house for $50,000. It has been said by 2 different engineering firms that if we go out to bid, it's going to be $150 or more to have it done. And it's been agreed upon that the ability in-house to do it at $50,000 is possible.
Ray, can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
I'm Ray Vermette. I live at 27 Scoutland Road, and I also oversee the city of Dover's wastewater facility. I worked with Ray for 5 years, and there's nothing at that treatment plant that he can't do himself with his own staff. We've done it in Dover. We do a lot, we do more with less, and that's the mindset that he's had. One thing I'd like you to do, Ray, is go through your credentials as far as start out with your master electrician. When Ray wanted to come over to Rollinsford, I didn't want to see him go. But I wrote him a letter of recommendation stating what the district would get, which I live in Rollinsford, so I thought it was kind of a win-win. I was sorry to see him go because he was kind of like my right-hand man, and he did an excellent job. But being a master electrician, all the things that you see, the extension cords and whatnot, he's done this on his own. He is more than capable of doing this work. And I don't think that he's given the tools and the support that he needs to do it. I mean, I've dealt with this district for 25 years. I don't have a home in the district anymore, but I still live in town. And it's always do it the cheapest. The cheapest is not always the best. It's not the mindset of, we'll do it right because we do it twice. Talking about things in unlined pipe and things like that, I spoke about that 25 years ago, and nobody wanted to hear it, and now we're at the point where we're going to replace it again. So, you know, this is a community that we all live in, and we want to do it right the first time. We need to look at what the cost benefit is to do it right the first time. I know Dover's a little different than Rollinsford, but that's the mindset that we have. We do things, Ray will tell you, we do it right the first time, and it saves you money in the long run. But not allowing him to be able to do this stuff, I think, is wrong. He's more than capable of doing it. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you, and, you know, Ray's my mentor. I came in with no experience to wastewater, and I learned under Ray Vermette. And I learned these practices from him, and, you know, anybody can do some research on how Dover's facilities operate, and they're top-notch. So thank you for that, Sonny, I appreciate it. So, you know, obviously, we understand that that's definitely capable of getting that project done for $50,000.
Ray, before you move on,
Yeah.
that was one of the warrant articles this past March, right? So
It was,
the funds
sorry.
have been approved by the people, it's just that you haven't had the approval to go ahead.
Thank you for bringing that up, yeah, so that was approved, that process, that installation was approved. That is, the warrant article was designed so that the money would come out of fund balance, so meaning there's no cost to ratepayers, right? So that's money that we have saved, that we've already established that we can draw it out. The $50,000 that comes out still leaves us a healthy fund balance on paper, so it's not putting us in a bad spot. But yes, that was approved, and the project is already, it's ready to go. I honestly need the support to pull the trigger with the vendors. Everything's ready to happen. We're not at that point quite.
Ray, can you go back to your credentials? We didn't get into that. Ray's a master electrician, and also take it from there.
Yeah, so I'm a master electrician. I stumbled into this trade for Sonny as an electrician. And like I said, I mentored under Sonny. In the 7 years I worked for him, I achieved my grade 4 wastewater. We did a number of other things. What else did we get certified there for? Tank
Underground
inspections,
storage
yes,
tanks.
all kinds of things. But, you know, important to what we're doing here, when I transitioned to this community, I've since achieved my grade 2 distribution license for water and my grade 1 treatment for water. So, they're pretty much,
Adequately qualified to do the job.
sure.
We're
Thank you.
we're at 7,
Yeah.
so do you have any other really important highlights? Because I think people are getting the idea that you've
Yep.
really gathered all this information, and maybe we'll have the opportunity to put this online.
Let's just hit some
People can
pictures
look
real
at it.
quick, because so
Sure.
people can see.
I want to be sure we can turn on the
this
lights
year.
though and let
Yep.
people, and thank you for, Sunny, for contributing, yeah.
May I just ask, I'm Mike Gibbons from Locust Street, I don't understand, it was approved at the town meeting and it's scheduled
It was approved and it is not scheduled at this point.
because,
Well, that's a question for the commissioners. The explanation I've been given is that it was approved to spend, but they have the ability to not spend if they decide they don't want to, for whatever reason. So it's definitely a talking point.
so the town approved it and the commissioners are saying.
The water district approved it at the annual meeting.
Okay,
Okay, so it's approved, the
And the
warrant
money is
article's
there.
already written up and ready to roll.
So why isn't it moving forward?
The commissioners at this point in time don't feel there's enough data collected and feel comfortable with my ability to do the installation.
Thank you.
who presented it at the state meeting, at the annual meeting?
Frank Roselli
We weren't allowed to really.
presented what he could, but there wasn't a whole lot of talking points on any of the warrant articles.
Is that why there's not enough information to go ahead?
Right. We had at that meeting, and I don't want to bring mud in, so we're going to keep it as clean as we can.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm entering here. I'm just,
Let me just give you a quick overcap of what happened, all right? At the annual meeting, several of the people that are here today as experts were present to present the case and the argument to the district or anyone within the district who has the right to vote to decide on these things. And they were not allowed to present the information that they brought that night. I was at that meeting and I got the idea that night. I'm like, well, we're going to bring all these people back so that we have a chance to actually hear the story of what we voted for and what should potentially happen. So the sticking point right now is that the current Board of Commissioners has not moved things forward that people voted for at the annual meeting. This is political, and I don't want to have this be focused on the
okay,
politics.
sorry.
But that is a political piece
Yeah.
of the story, which I would be happy to organize another meeting and we can have the political conversation. But I really wanted you all to have a chance to have all this information so that you can make decisions based on things that are the actual facts of the information and ask your own questions yourself so that you can go forward informed. That's kind of the goal of the night, okay?
Yeah, and I'll hustle through this,
Okay.
like 10 slides, they're pictures mostly. I just want people to get an idea of, what the staff's been doing over the last 18 months. So this is the tool crib. I'm just going to snap through them. You can see before and afters. This is our chemical storage slash addition room. The overall.
It's kind of funny that the initials of the WWTF chemical storage. I'm sorry.
I couldn't get away from it.
We're getting too serious anyway, so.
That's funny.
That's another wastewater.
Ray, I came in a little bit late, I'm sorry. For the safety for the operator or operators that are working with our chemicals, my father is a water treatment plant operator of 30 years for the extra water treatment facilities.
Yeah.
And a lot of things that they have dealt with and stuff are the masks and the stuff for the chlorine or the different chemicals that they use to work with. Otherwise, that can affect lungs and stuff, and my father is actually dealing with something like that right now. Hold on. Okay. Do we have that safety
I
stuff
hear that about your father. Yes, so
in our?
I did, when the commissioners came in, one of the first POs that I presented with the new purchase order policy that was implemented was the preventative maintenance gear, the protective maintenance gear that we need.
With the breathing
Yeah,
apparatus?
what I recommended was full face respirators, and we do have them at this point. We've got them, we fit tested, we've got a program in place, so yes, we do have that. In the past, I will tell you that we didn't have the problem,
Okay.
but we do
Because
now.
that's a long-term effect that
For
it
sure.
can affect the
There's
operators that
no
work
doubt.
with the chemicals.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, so what you see there is actually, the reason the walls are so white is the sodium bisulfite over the years has covered the walls. And I washed it down, floor to ceiling, so you could actually see the paint again. But, obviously the room needs to be addressed. That's another conversation. More 3D imaging, talking about the pump galley that I'm recommending as highest priority on the wastewater side. Just gives you an idea of how confined that area is and what we're dealing with down there. Definitely.
Might I add, someone received 3 staples in their forehead.
Yeah, there's a lot of low pipe work that you have to duck under to get to valves that you have to turn regularly.
So not only is it
That
safe-
right there is that's the plan for the upgrade. So, we're at this point now. We just need some support to be able to move forward so that we can implement the new pump galley.
Ray, is there imminent issues with the pumps right now? Are they leaking, failing?
Yeah, we've got one of our WAS pumps, which stands for waste activated sludge. It really doesn't matter what it does for the conversation, it is leaking. And due to the fact that we were planning on a full overhaul down in the basement, you know, the decision that was made by myself and the past commission was we were gonna defer all maintenance down there. We weren't gonna bring new parts in because they are readily available. But to do the rebuilds on them are anywhere from $1,200 to $4,800. So we've held off on all that. So we're at a point now that we either have to purchase the equipment and rebuild these pumps because there is high potential for failure, or continue on with the plan, which would be to do the upgrade. This is just some information that we can get into after, but this just talks about, you know, all the violations of the past that we've had.
So one way or the other, we need to get some money into it.
For sure, absolutely. And then, again, Willie Street complaints. You can see, dating back as far as 2015. And I've got records that go back to 2009, where the conversation started with Harcross about adding polymethyl phosphate to combat the corrosion issue that we were contending with.
Ray, could you just go back one slide? If I can make one comment from the regulatory side. All of those lines are violations. Before Ray came, there were repeated violations. Not the very first ones are arsenic because they were above the 10 parts per billion that we were implementing. So, and it just went on and on for quarters at a time. Then the benzene, that was a new well that came online for a few violations. But a lot of the others were just missed samples that really did not need to be missed. So really the attention was just not there. Until Ray has been on here for the past 2 years, it's a whole different culture. He's always available for whenever we call or email, immediately responds. The commitment is just night and day. So I just wanted to say that since the past 2 years, it's a very different story.
You know, do we accept that violations happen at times? I was told this a long time ago. We can't control it all, right? So my standards are high. I don't want violations, but, you know, they do happen. And when they happen, we make the adjustments needed so that they don't continue to happen. That's kind of my mentality. So, and then again, the Willow Street. So, but that's it. That wraps it up.
Jeff, can you put the light back on, please? Thank you. Yeah. Oh, wait. Thank you, Ray. The way I'd like to proceed is, I'm sure there are people who came tonight who had a question, they're prepared to have a question. Well, let's just do raise of hand, and Ms. Heward?
Suzanne Heward, a town resident, but not a water and sewer district resident. I'm just curious about the relative size of our water and sewer district as it compares to others in the state. I suspect it's small. How small is it? And for water and sewer districts this size, how have other municipalities coped to, you know, keep their staff well paid, to provide infrastructure improvements that are needed, to run safely for all parties concerned? And do we have are there other configurations? I know we have a separate water and sewer district. Just comments from everyone about how small we are and how we compare with how other districts of this size.
Typically, smaller towns are struggling because you don't have the tax base. My career, I started in Nashville, I worked at Nashville for 25 years, worked my way up from being an operator one to managing the facility. Coming into these small towns because I do check on about 60 plants throughout the state. Some of them are small, some are lagoons. But typically what we see is the tax base, you know, isn't quite, you know, big enough to support what they really need. And then we have funding from the state that can help out the towns. But typically, a small town like this, that's what you're going to find that you're struggling to keep up with.
How small are we? We in the last 5%, 10% in size?
From the plants that I've seen, I think there's probably like 6 large plants in the state. And most of them are going to be where you guys are. It's a small community. You guys had the mill. There was a reason why you had the treatment plant installed in the first place, to treat that kind of waste. And a lot of times this is what happens, the mills go away, but you're left with that infrastructure that you need to take care of. And you don't have that tax base because the mill is closed. So it's kind of, you know, it's a tough position to be in. But it doesn't mean that you can't do the right thing. There's ways around to get the money. It's like running your household. You can find a way, you know, you just need to ask. And that's what we're here.
And all that on the water side, you're about middle range because we have about 630 small, or community water systems in the state. We have one Manchester Waterworks is our largest, the second largest is Pennachuck Nashua system. Everybody else is sort of, you know, the small municipalities. So we have systems from 25 people to the 130,000 in Manchester. That's the range of water systems. And we all have to meet the same regulations. So on the drinking water side, which is my side, you're about middle of the range, a small municipality. You have a good base of residents and customers. And this is the planning, the number one tool that you have is your asset management plan, which has just been completed by Wright Pierce last year with a grant, 50% grant from the state. And then you just follow the plan, as Ray was saying. You know, you can make it over, you know, there's immediate needs, what's highest priority. You need to be reviewing your rates on an annual basis. Last year you did review your rates, compared it to other communities. So all that information is already put together, so you have a good plan to go forward.
So we're not in a completely impossible situation.
Not at all, not at all. You were in a very good position to go forward, so you have all the tools.
Thank you.
To go forward.
Judy?
Judy Nelson, and I'm here because I'm on the school board, and the school, you mentioned, Ray, is one of the, right in the middle of sort of the problem area with the delivery system, the cast iron pipes. And I noticed that one of the reasons that it's number one, that area, Willie Street and whatever, the second reason down was mortality. Are we talking about mortality of the system or
The
mortality
system.
of people?
Talk mortality, we're talking about our infrastructure, the system, the piping, our inventory.
But mortality, also means you could fail.
That's right.
And so, and one other question, I can see from the, well, I see a number of things from the slides. First of all, a lot of chemicals are going into the water. That's something that obviously has to happen because and it's tested when you pull it out. How often do you test it at the source, at the school or at somebody's house?
So we do quarterly, quarterly bacteria samples, and that takes place at the town hall and the fire station. Right? So that's, Cindy and I discussed this a while back and have identified that that's really the two best places to give a true indication of the chlorine in the system. So that happens quarterly, and when we do that, we're testing the chlorine residual at that time, and then sending it out for the sample we run.
But there are specific things in the street area with the cast iron pipes that are not being caught, for instance. All right, so I guess the only other comment I want to make is, would you consider adding the school to the quarterly testing? Yeah, I think you do test more often at the school.
The school is on our lead and copper testing, so we test for lead and copper at the school.
But not asbestos, any asbestos is coming through or anything like that. And the other thing I want to make, just for everyone who's listening, the cost of replacing that delivery system in that Willie Street area was 1.2 million. But if for any reason the school was without water, it would be twice that to try to educate our students. Twice that a year. Not one time, but twice that a year to take those 150 students, the 200 people that would be affected if we have to close that school. It would be twice that every single year.
And the school can't legally operate without running
Right, so
water.
I just want to point that out. If people think this is too expensive, think about what it will cost if we have to, if something happens that we have to close the school. I just want to make that clear.
Emily Quirk, Circle. How old are the pipes in that area?
So they range back with,
School was 1936, but at WPA.
So at some point between about that into early 50s, depending on how the progression of extensions ended up happening.
And what's the lifespan of those?
Over.
Cast iron rates can last a good long time. The real issue there is unlocked. So that tuberculation process. So we get this corrosion inside the pipe due to the water chemistry. So that's this buildup of this tuberculation. And there's also, if the water wasn't treated effectively, or if there was iron getting pushed source, you get metals deposition in the pipes as well. So, and if that sediment gets stirred up because some water moves by a little faster, that's when you end up with discolored water that eventually droughts. So whether it's a replacement or a lining, at the end of the day, coating those pipes or replacing them with a pipe that doesn't have this metallic metal against water is important.
Denise?
Denise Knowles from Silver Street. I want to know how concerned the residents of the district should feel about the increased usage of the porta while bringing arsenic into the system. I know that's been demanded that it's being done that way. How
So-
should we feel about that?
To step back just, so the demand of running porter isn't being upheld. We're not running porter right now due to the direction of the commissioners. The reason I'm running porter 5 days a week right now is due to the corrosion control study that was performed last year by Wright Pierce and the information that we received out of that study. So what we found was the two sources were drastically different in terms of chemistry. So they're both perfectly fine, but the differences in the water chemistry create that perfect storm when they mix. So when they mix, it causes the potential for high corrosion. And going through the process and understanding that, what we determined in discussing with Cindy, with discussion with Chris Berg and his team, was if we're gonna run porter, we want to run it as much as possible. The reason why the integration and the controls of the porter are very important. If we could get porter to run 24/7 like General does, then we have a consistent blend of water at all times. So we're not getting that, Monday morning when I start porter back up because it's stagnant over the weekend, we get that clash again. And that's showing to be the issue lately. Yeah, and I will, comment on the arsenic, because that, in terms of arsenic right now, the system is, in my opinion, and I think Cindy can attest to this, we've maximized the potential for treatment. We've got 4 quarters of non-detector in our sampling. The last 2 quarters we've had detectable limits, but I pulled the samples later in the runtime to see how much time I get before I start seeing that breakthrough again, before we need backwash. So I'm collecting that data, and even with a full day of running, we're still meeting the new standard that's going to come up, which is 5, the MPO 5. So we're still meeting it. The highest I've seen is 5 since we made the changes to the system. So I don't be concerned that the water is polluted. Those days are gone right now, and the process that is in place up there it's micromanaged. So when it's operating, we're testing on the out to check the certain parameters to make sure that the process is running properly so that we can guarantee that the water coming out the other side is arsenic-free or as low as possible. To add to that, one thing that we want to consider though, the media in the arsenic removal system hasn't been changed in 10 years. So that's our next big push up there, is to start thinking about the media change. Because I truly think with the parameters that are put in place right now, with some fresh media, I think we're going to be, we'll be doing it better than we're doing.
Yeah, and I'll just say that you have the correct treatment system. It took those early violations back in 2006 was because you were using a little bit a different treatment system, and you finally settled on this, what you have now, which is with the chemical feed. But with Ray's work over the past 2 years, he's been able to fine tune that with, we've been troubleshooting and working together very closely, so that you're now meeting really the new MCL, which is 5. So you're less than half, you're in great shape. And this is the same process that other large municipalities like Seabrook, Exeter groundwater plant, Newmarket is going to be building a similar one. So this is the right technology to have for a municipal system like yours. And the controls that Ray showed you with turbidimeter, this pH control, this flow pacing, all of that is an integral part. It takes a lot of labor because he doesn't have the instrumentation, but that is the right, he purchased a pH meter at both units so that he can control those and all of that. So that's working great. We're very happy to report that he's been able to fix that.
And that's pretty much the first time since the system was installed.
That it's actually been
It's actually-
controlled and in compliance.
And that's because we've never had a superintendent stay here long enough or care enough to do it right. So kudos to that.
Well, it's a complex system, and there's been a lot of information gathered by Cindy, and thank God, I mean, Cindy, mentored me through the process, because we didn't have the data available to figure it out. So with Cindy's direction, we were able to, with me turning on my listening ears and paying attention and implementing, what the professional was suggesting, we were able to get to the proper treatment level.
And I also want to give a kudos to Dr. Malley, UNH, because a lot of help also on the water quality, so he's an expert in water treatment as well, so my go-to person always.
Yeah.
So we have the luxury of having his help and some of the students helped us last year
Yeah, we
as
did.
well, and a lot of those things. So we're really happy to report all that progress in the past 2 years.
We had 4 interns, I believe, at one point.
Yeah, 4 and then a total of 6. Cindy and I have a friendship. She was one of our students, so the university donates students every summer to some communities, and I should brag about my 3 cats. I'm going to embarrass you. Holly, Emma, Justine. This year they're in Exeter and Seabrook. So it didn't cost the town anything. That's really important to underscore. And what we try to do is bring Cindy the world experience that I happen to have. And I think it's really important to understand the Wiley Road. And I'd like you to think of it. Imagine I paint half the wall white and half the wall black. That's your 2 wells. And unfortunately, then I take the middle of those and I mix the paints and I get this ugly gray mess. And that's what happens when your water sloshes back and forth through Wiley Road, unfortunately. We showed that really clearly. In fact, we're a little proud of the fact when we met you all and started with you, you were clearly in lead violation, and we, as a team, Ray listening, which is special of him. Right? A lot of people don't listen to professors, right, Holly? And Emma and Cassie. But he listened and he did what we all said, and we were totally clean by the end of the process. I was really proud of that.
Awesome results.
So anyway, I won't talk anymore, but, but we're glad to help, and as I say, this year we're in Exeter and Seabrook and Dover.
And just to add to that, we were able to meet Dr. Malley through, Cindy was the bridge to that. She sent my information to Dr. Malley, and he had a student that was interested in small communities that were struggling with lead and copper. So ultimately, Jalissa chose our community, and the stars aligned, and we had a great summer of learning a ton about our system and making good progress.
Our little blue flags all over.
The little blue flag.
In case you still see a little blue flag, that was UNH.
Right.
Lorraine?
Yes, Lorraine Hanson. I don't live in the water district, but I have some questions about capacity. And I was wondering, I have a well at my house, and I was thinking that I'd like to know about the aquifers that feed the wells that the town uses, because I'd like to know what's the residual capacity of the wells and the town water system, and also how would that affect other people outside of the water district if you had to run at capacity, and would you be pulling from our aquifers? I just need to know some of those questions.
I think that I can answer that. So when we permit a well, which we just permitted, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, we permitted the replacement well for General Sullivan. When the state permits a well, we do an extended pumping test, which evaluates any impact on surrounding wells up to a 1,000-foot radius. So that the maximum permitted capacity is that which does not impact anybody else. So what they are allowed to pump out of that well is the sustainable yield. That's it. And that's what you have at General Sullivan. At Porterhouse, you have 2 wells. A replacement well for one of those wells that was, and the bedrock wells tend to decline in yield over time. That's the nature of a bedrock well. So one of those wells was replaced, I think it was 2006, no, what was that, 2013 maybe? And so that one's older, so the replacement well and the original well, so there's 2 wells at Porter, and those are pumping fine, they have adequate capacity. So you could expand, actually, if so In terms of source capacity, you're in good shape, which you can't say for every community in the state.
One more question about that. When you're saying source capacity, how about, what's the residual capacity of all the wells if you were to, say, double the size of the water district or double the number of customers, or how many more customers?
Yeah,
you
so
would-
anytime that a system is going to expand, you need to obtain state approval, and that's part of the evaluation. If you were all of a sudden going to double your service community, maybe connect with another town or extend it to the rest of the town to serve private wells, for example, then we would evaluate what is the capacity of these wells. Again, you would have to do a pumping test if they would support a higher withdrawal rate, or you would permit a new source. Or another way that we augment capacity is connecting with other towns as well. So Somersworth, Berwick, Maine, some of these interconnections not only can provide supplemental capacity, but also emergency connections for.
The reason I was asking on that part is I understand that there's a development being considered tomorrow night for 9 houses on Silver Street. And we also have apartments in the Bowen building that will be going online pretty soon. And I don't know whether that will have any impact or how much of an impact it will have on our system.
Yeah, and that's part of the state's review of the expansion. So I think for those communities, they might need to do, the pressure quantity is there, but the pressure is not, and so they may need to do a booster station is one of the things that might be needed.
Go ahead.
I'm Hannah Goodrow. I just moved to Romford a week ago. So
Welcome.
We're excited to live here, but I just have a general question. Is it safe to drink out of my faucet?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It is, yes. The water is tested and it's safe.
But if I could throw out, I say the same thing in my house and I have a well, it really makes sense to run it for a while. It just does. I've been in water 40 years. Would you agree, Cindy?
Yeah.
Just flush it till you feel the cold or something, like a baby bottle.
Yeah,
It
some
just
of my neighbors
makes,
say we let it run for a little bit. Or
yeah, it just makes sense. We do that in our well, and I think it's just good no matter what town you live in,
Yeah.
frankly,
Other questions?
Mike Robinson, I'm a resident at Willie Street. I know there's been a lot of information flying around, and I know, no disrespect to you specialists, I just don't speak water and water management. But Ray, I feel as though since you've come on in the district, we've seen someone trying to get results for us, which we appreciate. Thank you. And from the panel of people and the relationship that you have, it's obvious that you're not afraid to ask for help. But I feel like you're the one that's been putting the pieces together for us over the years. And I know in the conversations we've had, it seemed like prior to this spring, you had kind of a vision for how to address Willie Street, and given the different programs that are in place in the state and just some different things that we had to do. Do you mind kind of summarizing some of that or articulating to Frank? I don't know if you were part of that vision as well.
Frank was the leader of the vision. I mean, the reason why we were able to make the progress was the support, right, from up above. So all the concerns that were brought forward, right, my first monthly meeting as a superintendent was with the Willie Street customers in bottles of brown water. And it got my attention real quick, right? So as it was a slow progression to get to see some results, I know we're not there yet, the vision became, it shifted gears once, right? We did the ice pigging. The ice pigging didn't prove to really give us a whole lot of relief. It was 2 months later, I think, we started having water quality issues again. So the next step after that was to install the low flushing hydrant in the culvert so that we had a point to release that buildup that we couldn't get with the velocity, across Willie, because it just can't get it with the low spot. So we installed that, and that has helped to be able to relieve the color that's sitting there. And we also replaced the hydrant in front of the school so that we had a better hydrant. It's a little taller. And the goal was to put an automatic flushing hydrant there that would trigger off at night. But we found that the neighbor near the hydrant was starting to see some moisture in his basement from the amount of water dropping on the ground. So we had to bail on that. And we're not able to put it at the low point because there's wetlands right there. And we have to dechlor, and it becomes a real complicated topic to just discharge there every night. that would be the best scenario for a Band-Aid, right? These are all Band-Aids that I'm talking about right now. These are options so that we can provide better quality of water until we can get to the real solution, which was gonna be a replacement. Because we did look down the avenue of lining the pipe with Suez, and there are other products out. Chris has tipped me off on this. I started with Suez, got the price back, and it was astronomical. I mean, it was gonna be equal or not. It was gonna be more than a traditional replacement of the pipe. So that's when the ice pig came in, right? We decided to do the ice pig, and then the topic changed. Instead of waiting the 3 years like we discussed at that first meeting, or it might have been the second meeting we all had, the decision was, okay, we're gonna get involved with the asset management study. We were finishing up the corrosion control study, so we were starting to kind of put the picture together, and it wasn't good. I mean, it was, like Dr. Malley said, we identified by tracking our alkalinity, we know exactly where Porterwell's water goes, and we know now that the mix is happening right there. So, you know, just flushing isn't the option there. It's a temporary, but the next step was now looking at doing the asset management grant, and once we finalize that, we're gonna start moving towards looking for funding, right? So once we had the study and the picture, we were gonna go after the state revolving fund to start. There's no guarantees that we were gonna get it. Actually, now that I know what happened this year, Chris and I talked about, chances are we weren't going to get it. There's a lot of competition in that arena right now because of the PFAS conversation. There's new contaminant levels that have been introduced, and there's a lot of communities struggling. So there was a ton of money requested, way more than, you know, and a lot of it went, correct me, I could be a little off base here, but a lot of it went to those types of communities. So we probably would not have got the funding, but it would have set the stage to start moving towards the next round of funding, which there's also the state trust fund, and it sets you up and puts you in a really good shape. It puts you in good shape if you've already applied for the state's fund, and you get denied, now you move to that. And then if that doesn't work out, you know, there's other options. You know, you gotta keep going until you find funding, but there is funding available, that's clear. So that was the goal, right? We're gonna go after the funding for the replacement. We short-term talked about the cost, right? The whole Willie Street Locust prospect, is for me, I was shooting for the stars. That's what I wanted to see happen. I wanted to see all that taken out to just, to get this problem over with. But there's a reality to that, right? So we were gonna look at in 20, you know, hopefully have funding in 2020, have funding in place so that we would see substantial completion of the Willie Street replacement by the end of 2021. So you don't start paying these loans back till substantial completion. So we would have had some offset before we started paying back. And we've got another bond that's on, that's gonna drop off almost around the same time. So, and that bond carries the cost, monthly cost that's almost identical to the cost of this Willie Street project. So the goal was to try and time it so that we could do the Willie Street project and really not affect rates with that. But we were finding there are so many other issues that need to be addressed that, you know, unfortunately, you know, going further down this rabbit hole, you know, we unveiled, right, the need for other issues, other replacements. But to sum it up, I think that, I hope I hit your question, Mike, but that was the goal that was in place, and that's what we were moving for.
Yeah, and I know just last year, like, you had made an effort to start trying to increase rates, I think with the commissioner's help, you know, just, we were on a path to start putting some money aside into a capital improvement fund or something.
I'll put a little in on that. We knew that we had to increase rates because what had happened was there was a budget, call it $600,000. About $300 for water, $300 for sewer. It was the same for the last 4 or 5 years. I came in 4 years ago. When it came to be budget time, there was no discussion about the budget. It was going to be the same budget next year, and next year, and next year. It was never going to go up. The engineering reports from 2 different sources said that we would not be sustainable if we didn't do something. The report from the auditor said you either have to spend less money or you have to raise rates. So the writing was on the wall. The people that were in place just didn't want to raise the rates. So year one, I listened, year two, I asked questions, year three, I got the other commissioners to vote on some really hard subjects. In year three, we needed a superintendent. We'd gone through 4 of them in like 5 years. Maybe the state should tell us what that does when we go through that many.
Yeah, it's not helpful from the wastewater point. I mean, water is very intensive, it's hard to run, and then a wastewater plant has a lot more moving parts. And, having somebody come in and learn that curve to run the plant, and it takes you a while. Ray, when you first came on board, I was here, I'm like, I'm here to help, just let me know what you need. And then I said, as you get into this, you're gonna start learning the plant, and that's how it works. After about a year, you may feel somewhat comfortable. After 2 years, you're feeling a little bit more. In my experience, having training operators, about 5 years, 5 or 6 years, you start feeling, you get in that comfort level, something comes up, I haven't seen it before, but it's an anomaly. So it takes that long. So having people come in and out of the door every couple of years, you're not gonna get any consistent process out of that. You're gonna have somebody who's gonna come in, I feel bad for the guy, he's gonna have to learn a whole new plant, he's gonna have to learn all the equipment, and then he leaves, and then you get somebody else in the door. So that's not gonna help you run the plant efficiently by having people come in and out the door. So,
Tamara,
that's all
can
I'll
I-
say to that.
Yeah.
One thing, I think the plant was upgraded, 14, 15 years ago. I think the mindset of at least the commissioners at the time that we redid the plant, we never have to do it again. That's not the case at all. I mean, this is an ongoing process, not only to redo it, but to keep it up.
So that's a good point. So when I came in, I said, well, what do I have to bring to the table? My background is engineering, and I have 30-plus years of manufacturing and experience and whatnot. So I thought I could come in and help them with this 14-year-old plant that they think is going to last 50 years, but really will last 20 or 25. So the other commissioners, asked me to come in, and they said, you've got a superintendent that doesn't, want to do anything, and he's not here, and you don't, just the regular stuff that had been going on in Rollinsford. The superintendents would have other jobs during the day, they were landscaping or whatever, but they were the superintendents running the plant, so there wasn't a finger looking at them. So when I came in, they asked me to really push on the superintendent, and not to use any names that was there at the time. So, there was a rotor, a ditch motor that had never been maintained, and my question, it's offline. So I said, well, it's offline, why don't we do some maintenance to it? Well, he wanted to replace it for, $5,000, and I said, well, it's about $150 if we do it in-house. So we did it in-house. It was like, it was impossible to, it was very difficult to get him to do it, but he did do it. But shortly after he quit, because I was putting pressure on him. And at that point, that's when the commissioners sat down and said, hey, we need to get somebody good, we need to get somebody that wants to be here long-term, and it's time. The state's gonna, I guess the state can take over, right?
Well, I'm gonna go back to the staffing issue right now. Ray's the only qualified operator you have. He doesn't have a backup operator, because you lost almost 20 operators just recently to another plant. So Ray is it, and how long can you carry that on all by yourself with no help? He's doing the water, he's doing the wastewater, he's doing all the maintenance on both. He's gonna burn out.
Ray's only got one,
So.
Yeah, I've got one operator, but he's in the process of being trained.
That's
He's
right.
been with us for a year, he had water experience, and he's doing a fantastic job, but like John said, there's a learning curve. It takes time to get up to speed to the point that, you don't have to be checked on and make sure that numbers are actually getting in accurately. So we're working through that learning curve.
So you're trying to run the plant, you're trying to maintain it, you're training an operator. I mean, you have a lot on your plate right now.
And we're super fortunate. I'm going to plug Kate Preston, she's our clerk. She has stepped up to the plate for me. I've trained her on the wastewater side, and she's acting as a temporary operator for me right now. If I had the vote right now, she would do the hire. She wants to do it, she understands it, and she's very intelligent, and she's picked it up in a month, and she's giving me the support I need so that I can get out and do these other items needed.
You had a question?
Yeah, June Jagnall, I'm a Willie Street resident. I'm just curious, what is the role of the state? We all know that things aren't going well, politically here, and if things were to really fall apart and, our water, if things were not getting done and, Ray quit or got fired or, something like that, would the state, is there a point where the state intercedes and takes some control over, this is,
So what we would
health and
do,
safety?
we would be issuing enforcement, and actually the current commissioners asked that, are we under any enforcement right now? Is the state issuing fines? And the answer is no, right now you're not under enforcement, you came into compliance, so we're not. If you lost your operator, we would issue a violation because you need to have an operator every day attending to the system. For wastewater, you need a backup operator. Right now, you don't have a backup operator, so that's an issue. But the state doesn't have any interest in operating your water and wastewater facilities, believe me. But the town can step in other towns. The district has been dissolved, and the select board can go, I don't know that process, or maybe Carolyn can explain, but you can dissolve the district, and the town could take over the management of the system, I believe.
But the town would have to choose to do that,
Right.
so it would not be imposed by the state.
Right. We would issue violations and fines eventually until you came into compliance.
Both the town and the district would have to vote for that to happen.
But if it gets bad enough, the state can issue an AO, right? Which
Oh, yeah.
comes at how many $1,000s a day?
Those are fines, at least the drinking water ones, I'm not sure the wastewater ones, it's $2,000 a day per fine, per violation. And once you're in violation, those rack up very quickly. But, per violation. Really, that's not a place where we want to be.
No, that's why we're
Ever,
here.
because our goal is to provide safe drinking water and proper wastewater treatment. So really, we work very hard with communities, with all communities in the state to be in compliance, not to be issuing fines. But we do have that option as a last resort.
I may be mixing the acronym up, but how does the town do with PCFs right now? Because I know that's a hot, PFAS, that's a hot topic among the state right now, and
So
how do we monitor that?
we're coming up this quarter, I'm due to monitor. It's the first time, so I have no results yet. So at the end of Q3, I'll have the results, and then we'll set a plan accordingly. So, yeah, I mean, that's it. And we just talked about this during the sanitary survey with myself, Cindy, and Rich Garempo. So, yeah, the PFAS is a big topic, and we don't know because we don't have any records or data. So it could be a major issue, and it may not be. So we'll find out at the end of this quarter.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So New Hampshire just adopted the PFAS standards, and what that means is that starting this year, end of this year, all the water systems will be monitoring. The baseline will be 4 consecutive quarters of monitoring, and if after those 4 consecutive quarters, it will establish what needs to be done. If any levels are above, then treatment would be needed, or perhaps a different blending strategy would be needed. Or if not, if they're low, then you would get reduced monitoring for the future. So that's just going to start at the end of this year.
So it's a monitoring system being set into place per se.
First we do monitoring for 4 quarters, and then then actions will be taken. The exception to that is if levels are very high, that you're above that you're 4 times the standard, then it would have to be sued. But other than that, it would just be 4 quarters of monitoring to establish the baseline.
For those of us who don't know the acronym, could you give a little more of an explanation of what you're going to be testing for?
I'm gonna let Cindy do that, that's all right.
You gotta be a linguist to get that one out.
You want to
Sure.
Yeah.
So, And it's probably the hottest topic in water in the country. We all grew up with things we loved, Teflon, Gore-Tex, waterproof boots. So the chemicals used in there are a whole category called fluorinated, so F is fluorine, organics. And there are, we think, 4,500 of them total. We know how to measure 14 as a nation, so the screening that's likely going to happen, and I know Chris's firm is doing a lot of these, we're doing some. You start looking for these fluorinated organic compounds. Now locally, of course, Pease and Merrimack, due to Saint-Gobain Plastics, sort of made the news because the materials were found in both places. It used to be the firefighting foam for all the military. So we have thousands of sites around the country, and so first thing we find out what's there, at what levels, and the other thing that's really tough for us as engineers is we're talking now parts per trillion. So it is so unbelievably infinitesimal that, you know, people talk about, you know, one beer at Fenway Park is roughly a parts per trillion, if you can imagine dumping that in a stadium. So it's going to probably be there at some teensy level, and then we have to decide, as Cindy just said, is it anywhere near the so-called regulation? You know, God forbid it's 4 times the regulation. We may have to take certain actions. New Hampshire's quite in the lead on this, in part thanks for testing for Pease, those brave women who started that. They're sort of our heroes, if you will. They actually come and speak in our classes. So that's what it is. It's a lot of compounds. You know, probability of Rollinsford having it is hard to guess. We don't have any, you know, any idea. Being an old mill town, maybe, you know. But yeah, it's probably the hottest topic in our water world right now. Yeah.
Suzanne Hewitt. I noted when you were talking about the water treatment for the General John Sullivan well, that if you were treating with disinfectant, is that what I read? So what is the nature of that? Is that normal? Is it worrisome?
Well, who wants to talk about chlorine? I don't know if you wanted to, I can talk about, so we use chlorine, we love chlorine in drinking water, is the reality, because chlorine allows us to maintain sanitary conditions in the piping, and that's why we keep it, we like to have a residual of chlorine.
So it's standard?
So that's
Oh,
standard,
yeah.
yes, it's standard. It's not required for well water such as yours. It is required disinfection for surface waters, reservoirs and lakes. They have to hold the water for a certain period of time in order to get certain disinfection. Groundwaters in New Hampshire do not need to do that disinfection, but we like it because it keeps acceptable, the bacteria absent, and it's throughout the piping. So that's why we have chlorine. In the case of Porter Well House, chlorine is also providing the important oxidation because it's a very strong oxidant. So we add it to remove the arsenic, and we add iron to bring down the arsenic, and we need the chlorine to do that process also. So it's a dual function in Porter.
Hi, Allie Gray and Kevin Gray. We're actually going to be Rollinsford residents for about 3 weeks. We are moving to Silver Street and a new construction. To be honest, I've actually never even tasted the Rollinsford water. I have no idea anything about how it is. But I read that, speaking of the chlorine, that there is a lot of chlorine in the water in reference to the same amount as in a swimming pool. I'm not sure if that could possibly be true, if that's healthy. I'd like to know, like, what, if people are using like in-home water filtration systems to counteract any of these issues that people are having. Like, I'm a little nervous also to drink the water and have my family drink the water. And so, you know, I just don't know if that's something that you would recommend for someone that, you know, we don't even have water running in our house yet, but is that something that we should just get built in from the beginning? Or like, is the amount of chlorine that's in the water safe to drink? Does it smell chlorine-y? Does it smell like a pool when it's coming out of a faucet? No.
Start there.
Yeah, go ahead. Ray, can I just say something real quick? I actually live on Silver Street, and it doesn't smell like a pool, and it doesn't taste like a pool.
Did anyone see that? That someone was
Well,
saying that it was?
you know, people get a little
I know,
rant,
I
and
totally,
things
and
get
that was
said.
my only reference,
Yeah.
that's why I wanted.
Yeah, but I mean, the complaint I would have is we have very bad water pressure.
Pressure.
The pressure's bad on Silver Creek. So I'm a little concerned about that development going on the end, because we add a couple more there, and next thing you know, I'm showering like drops of water coming out of my shower. But no, that is a little bit of an exaggeration, and I live on Silver Street, so go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, but to answer, so being new to were you on well water before?
We've only been on well.
Yeah, so you're gonna be sensitive to it, right? Until you get used to the chlorine. It's probably going to smell highly chlorinated to you. What I can tell you is that we test very closely for multiple residuals in our system daily. Chlorine is one of them, and my goal is to maintain, leaving the wells, 1.5 milligrams per liter, and that's well below the recommended level, well below the maximum level. But we had 5 actually brought it down from where it was when I started. It was in the mid-2s. And I tested them, there's a few different ways that I test. I've got some end-of-the-line tests that I run to see what the residual is out, all the way out, and because you gotta have residual at the end because it's disinfection, right? So I've got it fine-tuned to the point where my very far end point is getting residual just about like a 0.3. And I can't come down any further than that because that far reach is gonna be, there's a potential for just, not having the proper disinfection. So I've got it dialed in as tight as I can, and we do monitor it daily. So I can assure you, if you have a high chlorine smell, you can call in, and I'd be more than happy to come to your home and we can take a sample there and see what's going on. But there shouldn't be at that level. I would say that some people are more sensitive to the smell of chlorine than others. So, and I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on that.
You did have another question that's sort of one of my soapbox issues. So a lot of folks are afraid, right? I read in your paper that your water smells like blood. That usually means iron, by the way, but a lot of people are afraid and fear sells, unfortunately. But this idea, should we put a treatment where the water enters our home, which we call point of entry, or should we put it on our tap, which is point of use? I always worry when folks do that because I ask, in your crazy busy life, are you going to remember to maintain it? Are you going to remember to change it out when you're supposed to? Our surveys suggest that you're going to get busy and you're not. And so this device now becomes your worst enemy because it is collecting, and once it's beyond its life, it drops it into your water. So before you become your own water treatment plant operator by having point of entry, point of use, somebody in the family's got to be the drill sergeant and really replace it every 180 days or every 20,000 gallons or whatever, because you're really taking on a role that may or may not be what you want to do, like how often have you replaced the air filters in your forced hot air furnace, or how often have you done the things you're supposed to do. So I worry about point of entry, point of use, even though right now fear is selling that around the country, of course, that people are putting it in. I worry about that. Chlorine in general is good. I know PFAS, every year of my career there's been a scare chemical, but we still worry about the originals, virus and getting sick to your stomach from bacteria. So as Cindy said, we still really like chlorine, believe it or not. For the original days when we got rid of cholera and typhoid and hepatitis. So I just ask you to try and balance risk, and MDs will tell you never look on WebMD. I'm going to tell you never look on the internet. That's all I can say, because it's there to scare the heck out of you.
One other thing I'd like to mention is that before Ray came in, there were some discussions about when the wells are running and we're adding chemical, we had chemical feeders that would just add the same amount of chemical based on time, not based on how much was being pumped out of the well. And when you're pumping against a tank that's full versus you're pumping against a tank that's 20 feet lower, pumping less water through. So one big thing that we did do, and I think is it completed everywhere, flow pacing?
Flow pacing is completed general. It's not completed at Core. We don't have the infrastructure up there yet to do that, so. But that's part of the upgrade of Core.
That is part of the upgrade.
Yeah.
And as was mentioned earlier, it's always a good idea every morning you flush your tap because you want fresh water. You don't want to drink the water that's sat overnight in your piping for many reasons, but most importantly for lead, because our taps still have lead. Up to 2014, we had, it was perfectly okay. That was our lead-free definition up to 2014, was 8% lead. And when your water sits in the pipe, you could be leaching a little bit of lead. So you don't want to drink that first flush. When we test it, we test that first flush, but just as a worst-case scenario. So your regular practice every morning, or you fill up the coffee pot the night before after you do the dishes, or what I usually say is, you have our permission to leave the dishes for the morning. You do the dishes in the morning, and that way you flush the water, don't waste any water. But then you use the water for consumption.
And how long a flush are you talking? Are you
Really
talking
until a minute or so until you can feel the temperature change. Usually you should feel a little cooler.
Yeah.
It's drastic.
That's just a good idea.
It's a drastic temperature change.
There is a definite temperature change.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you're getting the water from the main, it's cooler. Yeah. The other thing I would like to throw out, which is very hard for folks to hear, we're not responsible, any of us, for your premise plumbing decisions. You decide on that. So let's say you're getting a beautiful new kitchen or a beautiful new bathroom, and you go on Amazon and you found these gorgeous fixtures, and they're 80% lead metal, which they might be if they happen to be coming from overseas. That's your problem, sadly. Now, we do add chemicals. We do try to help protect your so-called premise plumbing. But in reality, and I know it's hard for the public to hear this, from the meter box to your tap is up to the public to make decisions. And cheap fixtures has been a huge headache for our profession because of lead. So I throw out to you, be real careful, and that's another great reason for Cindy's advice. Open up that faucet, let it run till it's cold, because your beautiful mock Kohler fixture might be from South Korea, and it might not be as healthy as we wish. I just want to throw that out.
Thank you. We have just, we just have a couple minutes until 8 o'clock, so we're going to take your question about chlorine, and then I want to kind of have a wrap up. And if people want to stay after and talk, that's fine. We can keep the library open as long as you want. But I do think that for our guests, we want to try to keep it on the time that we had them committed to be here this evening. So go ahead and ask your question.
In terms of the chlorine, how much chlorine is safe to drink?
There's a maximum residual level of 4 milligrams, but as this was mentioned, yours is 1.5. You really just want to have enough chlorine in the system so that it's protected all the way to the end of the piping. So if 1.5 leaving the plant is what he needs to reach a 0.2 or 0.3 at the end, that's what it would be. But a lot of communities would easily go up to 2.5. Depending on the size of the community and your raw water, you might sometimes need to add more. But the maximum level is 4. At that level, you would smell it, and so that's kind of self-regulated.
If you do, I would have to call you guys.
Well, and one of the really important things that we have had in the last 2 years is somebody actually watching all this and monitoring it and gathering the information and proactively addressing things and available for you to call them. And it has not always been that way in our community with the people managing the water district. So these times that we're in and the situation that we're in, this level of quality, this relationship that our current superintendent has with all these experts that were willing to come tonight and speak to all of you is in jeopardy. And that is a really important part of why we did this tonight as well. And we in the district, who are the voters that control these things, need to be more vocal about what we expect and what we want to see happen in the community. Because we could go right back to where you said, Frank, the chlorine just went out on a machine, right? It was just like a set amount of chlorine. No one was.
That's the old technology.
Right. We weren't monitoring it to the degree that we are now, all the different things that are in the water.
And a point to make is, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that part of what we voted for, but isn't getting done?
Yeah, the warrant articles for both well sites are to improve even further. General Sullivan's been improved drastically, but to take that to the next level with online monitoring so that we can we can guarantee the quality of water leaving. And if it falls out of the parameters that are set, it would alarm me so that I know there's an issue.
And we're also studying things proactively so that we can make smart decisions before we've kicked the can down the road for 15 years and we're stuck with things that cost 30 times more to fix than if we took care of them immediately in the moment.
In-house.
Sometimes, yes, luckily.
Just a question, is that warrant article available like in the town records or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it would be in the minutes of the, Kate, would you be able to post the minutes of the meeting, the annual meeting?
Definitely, do you also want
It was
all-
presented,
everything?
it was presented with the budget that we presented to everyone when it came to the meeting, it was presented right there. There's a budget, and then there were the warrant articles, and then there were the sewer articles. So they were separate, and they were mentioned.
Give me like a day, I can definitely post
Could you post it, and then could you possibly leave a copy in the library so that people could come down and take a look at it in the library, just print a copy of it?
Oh, sure.
Okay, that'd be great. Would that be good for you? Okay, great.
And if anybody wants documentation, feel free to come to the plant, print anything off.
Okay, all right. Do you have something, Jen?
I just want to share that there is a active petition that we've started to collect signatures from water and sewer district members to help start to get the engineering report moving for Willie, Prospect, and Locust, to have a survey done of the income, because right now, as Ray was talking about, a lot of those funding sources are based on the actual average income of Rollinsford, the total town. And the village district tends to have a lower average income, which would help us get better rates on some of these loans or funding sources. Also, to look at that instrumentation that Ray's been talking about for Porter Well, and then to work through a discharge line for the Willie Street flushing hydrant. So the hope is to get enough signatures to get this in front of the commissioners to have a meaningful conversation and help to influence moving that forward, because we have not been able to move it forward thus far.
If we voted on it and we said we want it, why do we need a petition
It's a really
to get them
big
to do
question.
it? I'm missing something.
Can I just say something to that as a former member of the select board? It is in fact the Board of Commissioners for the Water and Sewer District, it is for the select board's prerogative to choose not to execute a warrant article that the voters have voted on. You know, it's happened in the town before, the contract didn't come in as expected or whatever the project is. I'm not saying it's a good thing, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just saying it's definitely, the commissioners have the authority to not execute a warrant article. That doesn't mean that residents of the town, or in this case, residents of the Water and Sewer District, shouldn't be asking them if they want to, why they haven't. That's absolutely something you can do. So the petition is a good thing to do, but that's why it may be necessary, because they can in fact choose not to.
It actually puts it in front that enough people are wanting to address this further versus having a couple people in charge of what they think is what's best versus what the group wants as a whole.
Can I just clarify that the warrant articles were for the improvements of, at General Sullivan and Porter, the instrumentation and those things? The income survey is not in part of the, and that doesn't cost the district anything, because actually that's a third party that does that with their own funding. But so there's more to more actions that you could ask to proceed on, like the income survey and pursuing funding for the Willie Street project. So those are not in the warrant article.
So I'm gonna ask you, Jennifer, if you don't mind, when we break this in a minute, to go be out in the front of the library. It'll be a little less crazy than it will be in here. And if people would like to sign that petition, she'll have that out there. I want to thank everybody for coming out. If you are interested in having another forum like this for information, please let me know. As I said, I'm the chair of the library trustees, and I would be happy to continue to organize these kinds of meetings if you feel that this was useful. We don't have to make all these people come back. We can have a whole other group of people that you might want to hear from or speak to. I want to thank Ray, Frank, Chris, Cynthia, John, and Dr. Malley for being here tonight. Certainly want to thank all of you for coming out, and this little room, we do things in here and we get 10 or 15 people and it's absolutely the perfect size. Thank you for your patience with the size of the room and the heat. It's cool by the window. I bet it's very warm over there. You're welcome to stay and hang around for as long as you like and speak, and I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you.
So, excuse me, did I just